It's the Cold Derby Show. That's yes.
And that's Sasha.
And we are live on idobi Radio. I think it's stormy in LA. So we've had to do the show from many different places. And we are in the same state, and we've had to do our little cannabis podcast we've had to do it from my house. We're doing it from an undisclosed location in Hollywood today. I think it's working. I think we're live. If you're listening to this on the podcasted version, I mean, you're Gucci. You're ready to know what it is.
LA is barely on the grid during these extreme rainstorms.
We're a mess. We're a goddamn mess. Okay, we are live. It's the Cool Nerd Weed Show. We find us in multiple places. We have multiple different places in which you can discover us. You search Cool Nerd Weed Show on Google, and you'll probably get idobi first. Listen to idobi at all times, always, because we fucking rule. And when we're not podcast ruling, we are music ruling. There's nothing bad about idobi Radio, like, at all. So you should always be listening to idobi. And then maybe you'll see our YouTube, which we've been TS. We've been hardworking on our YouTube, and also our idobi Radio staff has helped us get it done, and it looks gorgina. We look like fucking TikTok podcasters who have just been doing it for a second, and we've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah, the Tommy and Nick, the video dudes at idobi,
Shouts.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys fucking
killing it. Thank you.
Rule the world and are slaying it with fire, and just on top of all of the things that are important. And we, while there are a lot of podcasts in the world, and we do acknowledge that, we love our little podcast, and we love our little world, because we have the greatest fucking help and people surrounding us, and we love it. We love it.
We do. It's true.
It's our favorite place to be every week, and we've been doing it pretty much every week for about 7 years. We're up to 300-ish shows.
Damn.
More than that. Because we're already up to 150 something, I think, on just idobi alone. And before that, we were doing it for
there's so much back catalog. We have Christmas specials. We have sex education specials.
Yeah, you can, again, YouTube is a good place for this. You can also find us on wherever pods are found. Instagram sucks ass. And I hope it dies in a fire of burning ashes.
We do.
Painfully.
We dropped a limited edition t-shirt on our coolnerdweedshow.bigcartel.com.
We did. Oh, you did put it up there?
Yeah, it's up. Oh. It's live. It's live.
I didn't know. It's on our Instagram right now. I posted that picture.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Your phone is tied up, but Yes, I posted that picture. I didn't realize that you actually did. I thought that was just a mock-up, a prototype.
I said it was a prototype. I know I didn't get 100% approval, but oh yeah, check that out.
Don't need it. You have creative license and control. TS is brilliant at merch. So please go to this. I don't want to describe it. It's on our Instagram. It is hilarious. Boy, were we on one that day. Go to coolnerdweedshow.bigcartel.com. Go get it. It's classic nerds. Also, yeah, if you're watching our show, I'm standing up and I'm showing you our merch.
Yeah, classic Cool Nerd Weed Show logo tee with both of our faces on it. And also free shipping with the promo code NERDCORE.
Ooh, nerdcore. So nerdcore.
So, we got you. Free shipping.
We do gotcha. Definitely, our merch is fun and it's cozy and it's actually good merch. They do good stuff over there. So yeah, check that out. You can find us. We're around. You can listen to us in multiple ways, and we're glad that you do. And we do specials. We do love to do our I love a special. I love a special. I did want to get one together for Halloween this year, but I just couldn't get it together. Like I was like, I can't visualize what I want to do. I'll get it, but because horror is very important to me, so like I want to do something really good. And then it just winds up being like, because it's really just us recording it, like, you know. But we could do a big production. We're in Hollywood. We could get anybody we want. Shit.
We've got I've got Rob Zombie on speed dial
Yeah,
doing the
friggin'
haunted weed nerd mansion.
yeah.
Just pitch it, manifest it. I'm manifesting.
Yeah. But we do Christmas specials and they're fantastic. We do for Valentine's Day, we didn't this year, but we usually do like a cannabis and sex episode, which is always funny because we are 11-year-olds and we just fucking laugh all the time. So those are always fun. And today, I'm sure we've done a show on President's Day, but I don't know if we've ever done like a comprehensive look at.
A President's Day themed show.
Yeah. Like I don't know if we've really talked about,
I don't think we have.
which is weird.
I mean, we talk about cannabis history from time to time. We talk about the politics of it. We talk about the president's views.
Yeah.
Well, today on President's Day, we're going to take you through a timeline, a comprehensive look of U.S. presidents, founding fathers, cannabis, and hemp.
Yes. 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 Because breaking news, weed was around from the very beginning of always and especially this country. Like weed really was because it was it's not some nefarious drug that like took over the country and made it bad. It was a hemp was a naturally occurrent plant and was used as any other farming like crop would be used.
It was a natural resource that was cultivated globally for one reason or another. Specifically, the hemp was made for like rope and clothing.
Hmm.
Other uses like uh, they needed a lot. They needed a lot of hemp back
They
in the
used it
day.
like for everything.
It was
It's
used.
very
It was
strong. So like it's a little scratchy, but it's a really strong material. So um once they found out it could be multi-use, they really just they used it for their everyday everything. It was like, I don't know, what would you compare it to today? It wouldn't be something naturally occurring because we don't use anything
well, I
natural
would
anymore.
say it's the equivalent of wood, of trees.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, because
Okay. That's
trees
fair.
are
That's a good comparison. Yeah, paper. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Houses.
houses. Yeah, building
Yeah.
ships.
That's a good comparison.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so hemp was basically is basically you can use in any place. It's like wood in place of
Sure.
wood.
Sure.
It grows much faster. Um,
Yeah, hemp grows very quickly. It's a very like lucrative um, plant and crop. So, we'll start at the beginning of like recorded hemp history, which is around the 17th century, around the 1600s. And I'm sure it was before that. I'm sure there was a lot of, you know,
well, yeah,
there's a lot of things going on in the beginning of the founding of this country that that we won't go into because we'll just get mad. But as it relates to hemp, when we settled here in these parts,
like about 1619 in the early settlements of Jamestown, Virginia. Um,
good
it
old Jamestown.
it was a hemp production was necessary for the making of goods, and like we said, rope, cloth, hemp. Um, Bibles, maps were all printed on hemp. Hemp oil was pressed from the seeds to light
Yeah,
lamps and used as fuel.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And it looked like when in those days there was a lot of going back and forth and stuff. So they would demand production much like they do when you need anything. I guess oil is another example. If you need more of it and it occurs naturally, you just have all your people go mine it or whatever.
Well,
And that's kind of what they did with hemp. They were like, we need this, go make it. So
yeah. So the early British colonizers were
mm.
were were mandated in the settlement of Jamestown to farm hemp.
Yeah.
To
So
cultivate, they needed to cultivate at least 1 acre of hemp.
think about a world where they were like, you have to grow weed.
You have to. You have to. It was illegal for the early colonizers not to grow it. They'd be fined or
How about
jailed
that?
for not growing their hemp in
How about that?
1619.
What do you know about that? Not 400 years ago, we were like, you'll be arrested if you don't have the cannabis sativa plant on your premises. Wow.
Yeah, who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Yeah, I bet the stoners, the equivalent of the Cool Nerd Weed Show in 1619.
It's like played on a Victrola, a wax cone.
Yeah, and they were like, I don't want to grow weed.
I'm mandated by the King of England to grow hemp. I don't want to grow hemp.
Fucking taxes.
So,
It's always the same old story. So they had to grow this weed. So it really just pops up all around for the next like 100 years. And at some point, about 150 years later, it really did kind of become as profitable or more than tobacco, which was pretty profitable in these parts.
The story of the tobacco and the tobacco cultivation is interesting. That's a whole nother fucking show for sure.
Yes.
But is just as profitable, if not more profitable, than growing tobacco at that time.
Yes.
So where are we up to? We up to George Washington?
Yeah, we're up to George.
So George Washington, president number 1.
Yeah, he was the first guy.
The first the first El Presidente
Mhm.
in around 1760s. He grew very specific. This is interesting. He grew George Washington. You ever see that little stamp that was on the dollar bill? Like you could put it on, like I grew hemp next to
Yeah.
on the single. I always think of that, like I grew hemp. George Washington. Well, he did. He grew
He did.
New Zealand
A
hemp,
lot.
West Indies hemp, American hemp on 5 different farms around the
Yeah.
Mount Vernon plantation.
Yeah. He was like quite the gardener. He basically like bred weed. Like he was like, I mean, like who like knows what he was talking about, but he was like, just writing letters. And that's how we know it, who does everything. But he was basically talking about like he didn't mean for this like intoxicating, herb to grow this way, but he, sometimes when you love gardening, you have a happy accident.
Yeah. If you had seeds and you're bringing them all together from New Zealand, the West Indies, and your American hemp, they're probably going to cross pollinate and things are going to happen. Also, there's even the lowest grade. There's been stories that the early founders of America mixed like the hemp flower in with tobacco for a little
For a
get
little
yourself a
buzz.
little buzz.
Yeah. I think they were finding that it was actually like helping with different like insomnia and whatnot when they mixed it with their tobacco, and they just considered it like tobacco, like a crop like tobacco.
It was hemp was another cash crop.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was just it
Exactly.
was a cash crop, and there was some extra benefits. Not only was it good for rope and
Mm-hmm.
making fishing nets and good for all of the sea travel, but you can get a little buzz there.
Yeah, and they figured that out pretty early, pretty early on. That's what That's what they wanted to do, was get kind of stoned and enjoy their bounties and trade and make monies and you know break away from the British. And well, this is he's not a president, but he was involved with the whole
Yeah,
you know
Benjamin
Constitution and whatnot.
Benjamin Franklin was one of the founding fathers.
He had some
Also,
ideas, yeah.
he was he was like he was an official of like the pre before the president. There was some like
Right.
colonial government.
Yeah, he was like the next guy.
It was like the pre-president.
But he was like kind of a weenie, right? Like that's why, like,
Well,
not to speak ill.
history.
I get, yeah. I guess
History's a little blurry.
we can't give our opinions on any of these guys, or else our show will be 19,000 hours long. But yeah, no, he did some good things. Benjamin Franklin. He had some good ideas.
So Ben Franklin established the first commercial cannabis operation with his large hemp mill that converted the cannabis fibers into paper, and
And this is like on the East Coast. Don't forget. Like this isn't like Philadelphia. Like
this is all
the
Northeast from like Virginia. I mean, outdoor cannabis growing in Virginia is probably pretty fucking good. Back then, like fertile soil, like untouched.
Yeah.
Like, really.
Yeah.
So, growing all of this hemp, enabled the early settlers to have financial freedom from Britain.
Sure. This really helped. When like you're learning all about what happened in the beginning of this country, a big theme is Mother England. We were over it, and all we can do to sustain and not rely on funding from mother to keep us on this land was make money from what we found on the land. And hemp was literally hemp was like literally the first thing that helped this country be an independent country. Like if you're whatever stage of life you're in, the beginning of the country, right? Like that's all, whatever stage you are, that's like all they teach is, and whether or not there's way more to it, there is, than they teach, that the whole theme of this fucking country was to be independent of Britain. And hemp, along with a couple other things, was the way to do it. And the founding fathers, those dudes who signed, the Constitution and all that, like they were proponents. It's crazy to think of now because you're, even though I know it, it's just like, damn.
It's like where did we go? Where did we come from? Where did we go? And where are we going?
Cotton Eye Joe. As a young genius once said.
If you don't know, Sasha's referencing the first country techno hit from the 90s.
Yeah, we're talking about history today.
History.
But for realsies, it was pretty important to the beginning of this country. Hemp was, and like the founding fathers yapped about it all the time. They were like, "This shit is like gold." Like was gold even gold back then? But this was a very important like crop and a very lucrative, just money. It was, they needed it.
Yeah, it was just essential to daily life, and as well as a cash crop.
And they talked about it a lot. Like it's recorded in history, according to the internet, that There's like mad letters and shit about like the gardening of it and like
Oh yeah.
Thomas Jefferson and fucking George Washington were like, we fucking love this shit. Like, they like sold weed to each other, like went over each other's houses and like smoked and like shot the shit. They probably wrote the Constitution while they smoked weed. Just so you know.
More than likely created some new, fresh ideas. The Benjamin Franklin's hemp was actually produced the paper that Common Sense was written by Thomas Paine, which was the manifesto that incited the colonists to break off and protest from Britain.
Yeah,
the UK.
they were like, wait a minute, we can stay here.
And they often wrote about the importance of hemp in their local Pennsylvania Gazette
all the time. They did,
which was printed on fucking hemp paper.
It was. So I think it is safe to say that when our country was when these guys were writing the rules that we live by today, I mean, there are big old agreements and disagreements about those rules today. If you're listening from another country, we still talk about it. It's still because for a lot of reasons, we look at the Constitution and we say like, this is our right, and that came from weed. Just so you know,
literally written on hemp paper.
So it's worth thinking about. It's worth being like, well, maybe these guys were a little stoned. Maybe we can improve upon this with fresh eyes. But they did have a lot of good ideas. Listen, they were probably super stoned one night.
You mix a little of your hemp flour with
everybody's over. The wives are
some natural tobacco.
Yeah, wives are cleaning up after dinner.
It's like an early blunt.
Yeah, and George Washington was like rolling a backwoods for James Madison and Benjamin Franklin,
John Adams,
and they were like, you know what? What if we like did this? You know what I mean? What if we just made a country?
Thomas Paine's like, I have this idea. I wrote it down. I've got this whole manifesto right
where
here.
Where is it? Oh,
Check
fuck.
this out. Check this out. And that's where the revolution began.
Yeah. And people were stoked and smoking at the same time. So as we progress, we're still smoking. We're up to Thomas. He definitely wanted, like, he was like, I guess one of the first who was like, let's really, make this into something that like we can mass produce and make different kinds of it, and it's not just like one flavor.
Yeah.
He starts crossing like phenos, and like he's making like that Zaza, and like he's like, yo fam, I got that za.
I had no idea that Thomas Jefferson was like one of the early pheno hunters.
I think I heard this somewhere. Yeah.
That the Jefferson diversified hemp phenotypes by smuggling in new strains from China into the colonies. And, it was like necessary for the wealth and the protection of the country to get like new genetics into the hemp and cannabis genome in the new colonies. Thomas Jefferson, seed hunter, strain hunter,
seed junkie.
Wow. Thomas Jefferson.
TJ getting zooted.
I think we should name a strain after Thomas Jefferson.
Sure we should. What would we call it? Submissions, no wrong answers in our DMs. Cool Nerd Weed Show. We are not talking about the other merits of these men. We are just talking about their love of weed. I must say that throughout, and I will put a disclaimer in the description of our show. These men did a lot of not so great things, but they also believed in weed for some fucking reason. Oh, maybe because there was nothing wrong with it in the first place. We're really just telling you this because we want to juxtapose where the fuck we are today. This is the 1800s that we're up to now. It's 2024. If you're listening in the future, wow, like what happens? If you're listening in the past, also pretty cool. But we're like, we're 200 and something years later, and we are for some reason not in this place. So people who built this country, you know, everything else around them, maybe they had some work to do. When it comes to weed, somehow they were on the right side of things. I don't know how, but they love this shit.
They just knew that there was absolutely nothing wrong with hemp or cannabis.
They're wrong about a lot of things, but
for sure,
weed, they knew their shit. So James Madison, he's the guy.
He's the guy.
He's that guy.
Known as the father of the Constitution.
El Padre.
He farmed hemp. He took over a 5,000 acre plantation that he inherited from his father, a tobacco farmer.
Yeah.
And decided to grow hemp there.
Yeah. So it's a pretty large operation.
5,000 acres.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That is crazy. If you like think of that like today.
If you had a 5,000 acre farm,
like that's like
yeah, it's probably
like
they have like 20 billion square feet of canopy space.
Yeah, you guys are just like James Madison. Or who was there? Thomas Jefferson. Oh, yeah, James Madison. So, yeah, James Madison, we're in the 1800s now. He's the fourth prez. He is like still all about that weed. Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
Because then we enter the 20th century. And we will talk about what happens then. I mean, you know, it's pretty good for a while and then it's not. So we are the Cool Nerd Beat Show and we will be right back. And we're back.
We're back.
It's the Cool Nerd Beat Show. That's TS.
And that's Sasha.
And we are live on idobi Radio right now, Z's. And we're doing a very special edition of the Cool Nerd Beat Show. You can find us everywhere. If you please, you can Google Cool Nerd Beat Show. We're on Instagram, but it's useless. We will be Twitching soon. We have that all set up, and our YouTube is really important to us. Everywhere that you should be listening is idobi Radio, YouTube, and then wherever pods are found, go check out our YouTube. It's our faces. These are our faces. We're very fun to look at. I mean,
it's true. It's true.
Not to, not to toot our own horns, but we're adorable.
We're visually stunning.
A visual masterpiece. We're Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was based on us. So what we're doing today is we're talking about the presidents and the presidents throughout history and their relationship with weed. And I'd like to reiterate that we are just talking about the relationships with weed. We are of the mindset that our founding fathers were extremely flawed humans who were uninvolved, and there's much to be kind of course corrected, and that's the experiment of the United States. The reason we're doing this is because today is President's Day. It's George Washington's birthday or some shit. Happy birthday, Georgie B. But we have come to a point in time in our country where we can look back and say, well, wait a minute. Some of that stuff was so bad, but some of that stuff, hey, wow, like look at us 300 years later, not under British bullshit, under our own bullshit. So it's not good, but it is different than it was in the 1600s. So we can say that. We can say it's different.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be able to say these things back then. They'd put me in the loony.
She's a witch.
I'd be a witch. Oh, I would be a witch.
If she sinks, she's not a witch. If she floats, she's a witch.
I believe that if I were in the 1600s, they wouldn't even have to look at me twice.
Be burned at the stake.
I would immediately, I'd be like, all right, just
There's the
can I
fire
have some hemp?
right behind you.
Yeah, there is a fire behind me. I'm being burned at the stake as we speak for being a big old fat witch. So yes, have things gotten like better in that sense? Sure. We're here. We have the freedoms to be saying what we're saying, and some of us are okay. A lot of us aren't, and that's the reality of the country right now. But one thing that is interesting about the history of this country that we find is early on the interest and support and like reveling really of hemp, in turn cannabis, uh, because it was, hemp crops back then. But these dudes in the 1700s and 1800s were already, learning how to like do phenos. Like everybody was a gardener back then. Plantations were all the rage. There was a lot of planting and gardening
Yeah,
going on in the early
we
days of the
were
country.
we were in sort of an agricultural country.
It was a revolution, an agricultural revolution that you learn about when you're in fifth grade here. That was when we with fertile land. There was a lot to grow, and we had the minds to figure out what to grow and how to grow it. And hemp was on the list. And like I don't know about now, and I can't quite remember, but I feel like when we were younger, like we didn't learn
I
about all the hemp crops that these dudes were tending.
I I went to school in New York. Board of Regents educated.
Whoop, whoop.
For whatever that's worth. Um, there was never any mention of hemp farming in my historical education.
I'm trying. I
Zero. I
feel
don't.
like maybe once they talked about hemp, like in passing.
It was
Like they
probably.
showed a picture of like a fucking rope or some shit, and they were like,
Oh
"This
yeah,
is
this is
hemp."
hemp.
I
Yeah,
think in
that
my history classes in high school, I do remember them talking about hemp. I do
okay. They may have mentioned hemp,
quickly.
and then like a few of like the stoner kids, the in the back were like,
Yeah. And so they were like, "Ugh,
hemp
these
for rope.
kids." Yeah, yeah, for rope. So it was, yeah, it was kind of left out, but maybe you did hear it when you were learning about history. I don't know how they would leave it out. It was such a big deal back then. Um so we're basically up to like the early 1900s. They're making like machines. This is also, I guess, like some industrial shit was happening because it was right before World War One.
Yeah, it was around the time of the industrial revolution.
Mhm.
So they were using hemp for textiles and paper production, and they were creating machines to help process the stalks.
Yes. So they were still going strong. Uh it was like sustainable. We were entering the war, so it was still going.
It was Hemp is a very sustainable crop. They say it was you could use like you could produce 5 times more hemp and paper. Like hemp will produce more paper
Mhm.
than actually like cutting down fucking trees. Like trees take a long time to grow. We're just like shredding trees to make paper and toilet paper, but hemp like
For no reason.
grows cyclically and can grow. Hemp, bamboo, they all grow like naturally quickly.
So now this is 1917. And since we only have 20 minutes of show, I would love to talk to you about what happened between 1917 and 1937. But just know shit went drastically downhill. The emperor wears no, what is it? The emperor
Where's
wear no
yeah,
clothes. The emperor wears no clothes, I believe, is the name, the book you can read that has a very comprehensive look at the early days of the Marijuana Tax Act. I would implore you to look it up and find out its history and see why it happened and see what happened. But this is where stuff starts to take a bit of a turn in weed and presidential history. Because as of the early 19th century, we're still like, let's do this thing with hemp. Still makes sense for us. Uh, a couple of decades pass, a war happens, and then shit gets pretty bad pretty soon. And this is when reefer madness starts to develop. Again, we don't have much show, and we do talk about we've talked about
Oh yeah,
the early days of this early on the show. It's basically rooted in racism, obviously, just as most things are, and
it was rooted in racism. It was it was political. Um,
it was political.
Harry Anslinger decided that to implement a marijuana tax act to tax cannabis. Also, I believe he was in the back pocket of the Hearst people who
Sure.
were heavily involved in the timber industry, as well as
So
newspapers and
right.
all sorts of other
So
political
hemp
endeavors.
is right. So not only is racism super popular, uh hemp is really like monopolizing the market right now. Like it is doing so well. It is slaying. And other people who have other goods were like, the fuck? What do you mean?
Yeah, use racism to demonize the plant, and then use the
That's
rest
step
of your
one.
political connections to
To help your
to
friends.
help your friends make
So
money.
yeah, if your friends have a timber company, just like Florida, if you're, you know what I mean, if your friend has a farm where some trees grow, then he could be growing the state's weed right now. If your homie is in trouble and is losing money because of hemp, then make hemp illegal. So and demonize it with racism, because how easy is that? I mean, like just
It's right out of the old playbook, the
yeah.
dictator's playbook.
Yeah, Harry was like, "Ooh, la la." So, Marijuana Tax Act is put forth in 1937. So, this is when it became real awful.
Yeah, you don't have a tax stamp. You've got importation, cultivation, possession, distribution of hemp.
Illegal.
Fine, it's totally
No more.
illegal. Yeah,
Stop it. So, the founders of our country um were like buying acres and acres of this country to grow hemp, and then all of a sudden, the war is happening, nobody's looking, and they come out from under per the huge and they say no more. So just think about this. Think about the generations of farmers. Think about the generations of the it, this affects a lot. This affects every single person who lives in this country at this moment. Things that were going are now illegal. Now you can't do it anymore. So for the next 10 years, there's kind of like a pretty big sweep. But then, a little known kerfuffle called World War II shows up. And of course, hemp is back because it matters. And they kind of like put a hold on the tax act, and because we were called to do this and the war was so horrendous and we needed so many things, we produced hemp again.
yeah. As part of the war effort, one of the campaign slogans was "Hemp for Victory."
Yeah.
Grow hemp for the part of the war effort, because the war effort needs supplies, and
Just
hemp.
to note, this is a time when propaganda was it was the way to communicate. So hence why the war was so big. It was the first social media. It was the first way to get your message across, was propaganda. So you can say what you want, and then the opinion will follow. So they said, hemp good, hemp will help. Cannabis that gets you high, still so bad. Oh my gosh, so bad. Stop it, so bad. So we're all on alert. We're all, like just are being like jerked back and forth from this worst war in human history, one of them. And we are now thinking, oh, hemp is different.
So
Hemp is like, we need that. It doesn't count.
so that was actually that was at the point of when we started to differentiate hemp goods from cannabis.
Which, just to be clear, at first, there was no difference.
It's all the same. It's essentially it's the same plant.
Like G-Dubs was growing with higher THC content allegedly, and didn't realize it. Like hemp, what we consider legally hemp is below whatever point. What is it, like 3 or what 3%?
It's like 0.03. Like,
so it's it's nothing. Back then it was probably not nothing. But here's where we're like, no, we need it for the war, but it's not cool yet or ever again. Still so bad. Oh my gosh, so bad.
We need the hemp. We don't need the pesky cannabis.
Also to note, other drugs are coming in to this country.
Oh yeah, opium,
Mm-hmm.
heroin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the style at the time.
It was the style at the time. Opiums was big. Narcotics were a big deal back then. They,
Cannabis was coming in from like south of the border. Also, I'm probably freely imported from all around the world at that time.
Yeah. So now all these like other narcotics come in, and the government is like, oh wait, like this is where we get swept up in the mix. It gets swept up in the mix, and this is where things kind of get out of hand, because now after World War II, I mean, you can see in other facets of history, like we're a little paranoid. We're paranoid for lots of things after World War II, and we want to.
Shit is crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy when you look at like the world and weed. And so now President Harry S. Truman, he looks at he looks around at the world around him, and he's like, okay, sweeping criminals.
1951,
which makes sense. Think about 1951.
The Red Scare.
Yep. Communisms.
Yeah.
Nobody liked it. It was a scary time for here. It's a scary time now, and because I always wonder what it is now, with all the shootings and everything, like you can't even go to a fucking Super Bowl game or a Super Bowl celebration. I always wonder like what it was like, and I'm like, do you think the Red Scare was like this? And I'm like, no, because that was like all like a scare. This is real. But at the same time, back then it was pretty scary.
Yeah, if you were caught for a first-time possession of cannabis, you could face 2 to 10 years in prison or a fine of $20,000. In 1951, that's like a fine of $200,000 or more today.
And mind
for
you,
what we're doing here in the living room.
What we're doing here in the living room. And don't forget, people didn't just stop smoking weed. It was around because it was the biggest crop in the country for fucking 300 years.
It's been part of the culture.
So we didn't go away, you know what I mean? So like, yeah, so now we're criminalizing already. So this is how it starts. Girls, gays, and theys. This is where criminalization of weed fucking starts. Right, her. This is where things literally take a turn, and you are now a criminal for doing something you were doing. That is how the traditional market is born. That's why it's called that. This is what we were doing already. You changed it on me. I didn't know you were going to change it on me. Now I'm a criminal. We move forward a few years. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, still all aboard the "we hate drugs" train. Increases.
Passes the Narcotic Control Act of 1956, which increased penalties for the sale, possession of marijuana, heroin, and opium. All, as you can see, in 1956, all lumped into the same category: cannabis, heroin, and opium.
As it is today.
And also, like, increased fines, like in penalties, like it's already 2 to 10 years.
Right. So it got
even worse.
So basically, if you were caught with weed, I mean, it was like you can do like you. And again, think of 1956. This is like the hippie era. This is the time of expression. This is
like pre. That's like pre. It's a pre.
It's yes, yeah.
But
well,
it's
the tail end of the 50s. Yeah, I guess the hippie era was like after JFK died. But I feel like the late 50s. Like I feel like this was the boomers. This is
The
when,
boomers. There
like,
was like fear of like nuclear war,
right.
Red Scare, communism.
So if somebody was doing drugs, then that person was probably going to kill you, and and it was a logical thought to just put them in jail or label them as a criminal, and it really just doesn't stop from there. Now we do get to the hippie era. And this is so we get to JFK's time. JFK may have smoked for an injury.
Yeah, apparently JFK, well, he was a war hero. He was there.
Yes.
He suffered injuries in the war and occasionally, possibly, allegedly used cannabis to heal, relax. And
Or maybe with one of
or,
his
or
mistresses.
maybe just party with one of his
Yeah,
mistresses, which was the style at the time.
which was the style at the time.
And apparently allegedly shared some marijuana cigarettes in the White House bedroom.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Fuck yeah.
That's what we've been dreaming of. Wow, JFK did it. So we're entering a time where things are at kind of like a little bit of a boiling point, and um it's really, you think of the 50s, you think of things being like stifled, and then you think of the 60s and everything kind of explodes. So your boy Harry Anslinger, he dips, and maybe this is a time for change, a time for love, a time for fucking whatever the fuck. uh but no, we don't turn because LBJ gets in there, um and he's like, "Oh no, this was good. This was good where we were going. We are going to schedule this. We're going to make this into we're going to put cannabis with opiate use. This is
Oh
great."
yeah. This is exactly what we need to they had no fucking idea. Lyndon B. Johnson had no idea. It's kind of like going against the hippie movement. We'll get to the Nixon list, but
Yes.
they're like, yeah, this is cool. We're gonna just put cannabis in with opium.
Yeah,
Whatever.
we don't like,
We have
how
told,
whatever was happening was great.
yeah,
And
ill-informed.
but still, because weed was around and was okay for so long, it still is. And people are coming out of this like time of like terror after two
And
world wars and the Red Scare, and they were coming into a time of like, okay, we don't give a fuck. Like they were like,
yeah, it was. I feel like the 50s was a time of like some oppression and very
oh yes,
like
but
a
everything
religious
was
moral kind of
but everything was possible. You could go
for
to the
sure.
moon. You could fucking JFK could be president. You could fucking go to college. You weren't drafted yet. So like the Vietnam War hadn't happened yet.
Yeah,
So you were
yeah.
still like, whoa,
The
everything is
possibilities.
possible. But of course, as usual, the government was out of touch and was like, no, we love this. So they kept it going strong. So then we get to Richard Nixon.
Tricky Dicky.
Good old slippery Richie.
He had a bug up his butt and considered drug abuse to be public enemy number one. Basically, because I don't think none of the hippie movement, none of them loved Tricky Dick,
Oh, well, he
Richard
didn't like
Nixon,
them
and he didn't
either.
like
He
them
wasn't a
at all.
fan.
He
No,
was not a fan,
no, no. He
and
didn't
all
he didn't like anything about
anything.
expression
Yeah,
or freedom.
notorious racist.
Yeah, no, he was definitely a racist. And yeah, if you don't know the history of Richard Nixon, you can easily find all of that at your fingertips. But he did some bad stuff, and he one of those bad things. It also starts with a W. Was war on drugs, and his big thing was, we are going to make this a war on drugs, which we know as to be a war on race in other minority communities, and it made it okay to do what we've always done and pour all of the things that we can't figure out how to deal with onto people of color, and it worked so well. So well. People believe, again, we're still kind of going strong with propaganda. People believed, white people believed, I should say, that drugs were going to kill you. They believed that with their whole chest. And they believed that if you sold weed, you were really like you were demonized in a way that like a rapist wasn't even demonized. You know what I mean? Like you were put in a category as a drug addict, as a
Yeah.
person who was a failure and couldn't achieve the American dream.
You could get 10 years for just having like 1 or 2 joints.
Yes.
That's insane.
Yeah.
10 years of your life.
Yeah. I mean,
ruined.
Yeah.
For what? Just like Tricky Dickie's opinion about cannabis, which were completely out of touch.
Yeah, because of all the laws that Richard Nixon upheld. So so that happens, everything kind of deepens. So Richard Nixon, he goes off into the sunset after he ruins the country and the idea of democracy and government.
The first president impeached.
You probably wrote a paper about it. And so he dips. And then Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter,
they kind of just continue funding the war on drugs.
They don't care. They got lots of shit to deal with right now. A lot of things going on. And then Ronald Reagan comes.
Stay tuned for It Was the Style at the Time, a Stoner President's Day special, Part 2, coming soon.